You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Oh, it is good to do that again. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. Although after seeing the sights that I saw in South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, and Colorado, you wish you were me. I mean, obviously, I live in New York, okay? I live on Long Island. Going to those 4 states was like going to another country. It really was. It was hard for me to believe that those 4 states with their gorgeous scenery is part of the same country as New York. Mount Rushmore, the Black Hills, the Badlands, Devil's Tower, the Rocky Mountains. It's just breathtaking. Absolutely breathtaking scenery. I mean, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but if I'm not driving, I'll be buried in my phone reading something, being on Twitter, going through emails, something like that. I didn't do that a lot. Driving through those 4 states, it's incredible. You're just amazed that something as beautiful as that can exist. It proves that there's a God, okay? You can say it's erosion, you can say it's natural. I'm not saying it's not, but no, that needed some help. No way was that beauty done without the help of a divine being. But it is good to be back. There's no question, I did miss this. I did miss talking to you. A lot happened in the week I was gone. And obviously you knew that things would happen, but no, there are some serious things to get into. Not gonna waste any more time. I'll start with the NBA Finals. Finals that, even if I was still in New York, I would have had a tough time watching. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. I didn't watch a lot of Game 1. I was having dinner with some family that I have in Colorado. The game was on in the background, but I really wasn't watching it. Game 2, I didn't see any of. I did see Game 3, though. I got home in time for that. I mean, look, when you're on vacation, more often than not, you're not going to watch sporting events on TV. There was one time I did. One time. I went to Universal Studios with my mom, and this was in January. The NFL playoffs were happening. We had accomplished what we wanted to accomplish that day. So I said to my mom, hey, how would you feel about getting out of the heat, going back to the room for a little bit? The NFL playoffs are on. I'll watch that, and you can do whatever you want to do in the hotel. And she was okay with that. And that game turned out to be a very important game. That was the Des Bryant game against the Packers. Freezing in Lambeau Field. Hot as blazes in Florida. So at least I saw an important game. If you're going to go back to a hotel and not do anything else to watch a sporting event, that sporting event better be good. This NBA Finals has not been good. Game 1 was a horror show for the Bucks. Game 2, from what I gathered after the fact, was solid. Like I said, I didn't see it. And Game 3 was a blowout. That game was over in the second quarter. I mean, I'll say this, it's nice to see that the Bucks aren't gonna keel over and die. After losing the first 2 games in Phoenix, I mean, they needed to win that game yesterday, or else forget about it. They weren't going to come back from 3-0 down. That was an impressive win. And what's impressed me even more is seeing Giannis not suffer any ill effects from his injury. Giannis obviously missed the final 2 games of the Eastern Conference Finals. Came back for the NBA Finals, did not play well in Game 1, only had 20 points. I understand 17 rebounds, but you want Giannis to score more than 20 points. If you can limit Giannis to 20 points, you've got a great chance of winning. And that's what the Suns showed in Game 1. Games 2 and 3, Giannis has been fantastic. I mean, there is something to be said about playing your best basketball in the NBA Finals. That does mean something. And Giannis is doing that. Scoring over 40 points in back-to-back games, the most points he's scored in these playoffs. That's impressive. And it is good that the Phoenix Suns are finally facing a team at full strength. I know I've said this before, but it's the truth. The Lakers weren't at full strength, the Nuggets weren't at full strength, and the Clippers weren't at full strength. The Bucks, for all intents and purposes, are at full strength. I understand that they don't have Dante DiVincenzo, but that's an overcomable injury. It's not one of their big 3. It's not Bobby Portis, who had a really, really good game yesterday. 11 points and 8 rebounds in just 18 minutes. Let me tell you, when given the chance, Bobby Portis can produce. He's a solid player. There's a role for him in this league. So it's nice to see that the Suns aren't going to waltz to an NBA title. It's nice to see that they're going to have some stiff competition. And here's another thing that's good. Game 4 is going to be on Wednesday. Smartest decision that the NBA could have made. There's no baseball that day. No home run derby, no all-star game, nothing. So if you're a sports fan, you are watching Game 4. There is no way around it. I mean, I've said this a million times. There's no real juice around this NBA Finals. I've seen some tweets saying that this Finals is doing better than last year's Finals. Yeah, of course it is. Last year's Finals was in October. We were all either watching the MLB postseason or football. For goodness sake, it was in a bubble in Disney. You had a sense that you were watching YMCA basketball. That doesn't mean that this Finals is doing good. I don't know how it compares to 2019 18, 17, 16, etc., etc. But I know that this finals really doesn't have a lot of juice. We've had 2 games that have been absolute blowouts. Game 4 better be good, I'll say that. This is the NBA's moment. There's no excuse. They've got to put on a show here. You don't want people turning off ABC to watch Big Brother. Or the local news or something like that. On Wednesday, I really want to see a great basketball game. In the NBA Finals, that should not be hard to accomplish. I'll throw this out also. We've seen some great individual efforts here. I spoke about Giannis. I'll go a little further in depth on him. Game 2, he had 42 points and 12 rebounds. Game 3, he had 41 points and 13 rebounds. He's the first player to have at least 40 points and 10 rebounds in back-to-back NBA Finals games since Shaq did it in 2000. DeAndre Ayton has really impressed me. Game 1, he had 22 points and 19 rebounds. Game 3, he had 18 points and 9 rebounds. He was the Suns' best player yesterday. I mean, that doesn't bode well for the Suns. As much as I like DeAndre Ayton, he can't be the best player on the Suns if they're going to win. Game 1, the Suns' best player was Chris Paul. That was really nice to see. Chris Paul's first ever NBA Finals game, and he puts up 32 points. You had to be happy about that. Game 2, it was the Devin Booker show. He had 31 points. Game 3, DeAndre Ayton. Yeah, that's not going to work. Ayton's really good. I'm not knocking him. You just want either Booker or Paul to be the Suns' best player, if you're a Suns fan. I mean, Devin Booker yesterday was non-existent. Only had 10 points, 3 for 14 from the field, 1 for 7 from beyond the arc. The Bucks did an excellent job of keying in on him. See, here's the thing. On paper, the Bucks have the edge in this series. Giannis is better than any player on the Suns. He's unstoppable. He's the Greek freak. We all know this. And you pair him with Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday, 2 really good perimeter defenders. That doesn't bode well for guys like Booker and Paul. You got the sense that the Bucks were just trying too hard in games 1 and 2. They got back to basics in Game 3. They played through Giannis. They let him attack. They let Middleton and Holiday provide some spacing. There was beauty in its simplicity. I mean, really good game for the Bucks. Bad game for the Suns. You know it's bad for the Suns when Cam Johnson is out playing Devin Booker. I mean, I like Cam Johnson. He's proven all the doubters wrong, including me. I didn't like that pick at the time. And look, I was skeptical of him. Last year, I just didn't see a lot from him. You know, it seemed like he was going to turn into a solid shooter. That was basically it. This year, he's refined his game. He hits big shots. He makes big plays. He's a clutch player. I like Cam Johnson. I give him credit. This game coming up on Wednesday, Game 4, is a must-win game for both teams. The Bucks need to win because they're not going to come back from 3-1 down. And the Suns need to win because they need to put a stranglehold on this series. You don't want this series to turn into a best 2 out of 3. You were the better team in the first 2 games, obviously. To have to go back to Phoenix, tied at 2? Granted, you have home court advantage, but once a series gets down to a best 2 out of 3, a million things can happen. This game coming up on Wednesday is going to be very, very interesting. I do just want to put a bow on the Stanley Cup Finals. Obviously, the Lightning won it on Wednesday. They went back-to-back. Give them credit. They're just an incredibly talented hockey team. The reality is the Canadiens just didn't have the talent necessary to overcome the Lightning. I mean, here's the thing. The Tampa Bay Lightning's 5th best player is better than the Canadiens' best player. Sometimes that's all it takes. I mean, for goodness sake, the first 3 games of this series, the Lightning scored at least 3 goals in all those games. Game 4 was the overtime victory by the Habs. They didn't want to get swept at home. But even then, you got the sense that the Habs just got lucky. The Lightning were 0 for 5 on the power play in Game 4. They outshot the Canadiens 34-21. Usually, if you give the Lightning 5 power plays and you get outshot like that, you're going to lose that game. The Habs got lucky. And then Game 5, the Lightning win another series-clinching game 1-0. Andrei Vasilevsky won all 4 series-winning games for the Lightning with a shutout. Yeah, there's a reason that he was the Conn Smythe winner. I mean, one thing that is a little notable is that the Lightning kind of gamed the system a little bit by going so far over the salary cap in the playoffs. Once you get in the playoffs, the salary cap is turned off, and the Lightning used that to their advantage. It's how they got Nikita Kucherov into their lineup. I mean, a lot of people were saying that's unfair. Every team could have done that. The NHL has a couple of those foibles. That and the retaining salary via a third team in a trade. Like, if you want to trade for a guy with a $10 million salary, but you only have $5 million in cap space, a third team can retain $5 million of that salary in exchange for draft pick compensation or a young player. It doesn't seem like Gary Bettman wants to change that. I'll say this. It's kind of weird to see a guy come in for the playoffs despite not playing at all in the regular season. The guy was on long-term injured reserve, then he comes back just in time for the Stanley Cup playoffs. That is kind of weird, but the Lightning found a loophole and they exploited it. Give them credit. Give them credit for being smarter than everyone else. Give them credit for having an incredibly talented roster. I mean, here's what ticks me off more. The New York Islanders could have won the Stanley Cup this year. If the Islanders had won just one more game, if they had scored just one more goal in Game 7, maybe, just maybe, this turns out differently. You can't tell me that the New York Islanders wouldn't have beaten the Montreal Canadiens in this Stanley Cup final. I mean, here's the thing. The New York Islanders would have been in a very unfamiliar position. They would have been the better team. They would have been the more talented team. On paper, the Islanders are not more talented than the Penguins, nor the Bruins, nor the Lightning. They are more talented than the Canadiens. They just are. Matthew Barzal versus Tyler Toffoli? I'm taking Barzal. Semyon Varlamov versus Carey Price? It's close, but I'd probably take Varley. The Islanders would have won this Stanley Cup. That's what ticks me off. Maybe it wouldn't have been in 5 games, but the Islanders would have won. I'm not saying that this is it for the Islanders. This was their window to win and they blew it. No, that's not the case. The Islanders will actually enter next year as a Stanley Cup favorite. Maybe not the Stanley Cup favorite, but they'll be in the conversation. Back-to-back Stanley Cup semifinals appearances will do that to you. The thing is, though, we have the expansion draft to worry about. So the Islanders are going to lose someone big, whether it's Leddy, whether it's Mayfield, it could be Jordan Eberle. They're going to lose someone big, and it's no guarantee that they're going to be able to replace him. Is there any guarantee that Kyle Palmieri is going to re-sign with the Islanders? No. That's something I've seen a lot. The Islanders are going to try to convince teams to take their bad contracts so they can bring back Palmieri. I wouldn't hate it. I understand the logic, obviously, but I don't think you need to go that route. If you want to try to convince someone to take a guy like Hickey, or even Andrew Ladd, yeah, but I wouldn't go crazier than that. Here's something that deserves mentioning, okay? Everyone is bringing up the playoffs that Palmieri had. And yeah, he was great in the playoffs. Scored 7 goals, 9 points in 19 games. Had some really clutch moments, there's no question. The thing is, though, you look at his regular season with the Islanders, it was dreadful. Just 4 points in 17 games. So do I want to bend over backwards to sign Palmieri to a big contract? Or do I want to let him walk, keep the forward core intact for the most part? Anders Lee will be back. Lee, Barzal, and Eberle was a really good first line last year. You've got the Killer Bees on the second line. Third line, Komarov, Pajot, Wallstrom. And then the energy line. I like that. I like that a lot. I don't think you need to go crazy. That's what I was doing after the Stanley Cup Finals ended, diving deep into Islanders articles, expansion draft projections, and what it would lead to. I am going to do an expansion draft recap. I don't know if I'm going to do it as a special show or as part of a regular episode of the Jacob Valk show, but I am going to do a recap. It's going to be a lot of fun. Not too often you get an expansion draft. Really looking forward to it, to tell you the truth. Moving on now to some Olympics news. As we all know, there's been a lot of controversy around the Olympics. Japan still has it really bad with the coronavirus. The vaccine rollout there has not been successful. Less than 13% of their population has been fully vaccinated. To put that in perspective, in the US, 48% of our population is fully vaccinated. So obviously they're having a lot of trouble with the coronavirus. Tokyo is in a state of emergency right now. It's a really bad scene over there. In response to that, there will be no fans allowed to watch the Olympic Games live. So from the opening ceremony to the closing ceremony, there will be no fans. Talk about a rec center feel. It's bad enough you're watching these events that you don't know the rules, you really don't care about it, you watch it because of your country. And part of that is seeing your countrymen that travel to this foreign country to support their own country. Now we're going to watch gymnastics with no fans in the stands. Running with no fans in the stands. Weightlifting with no fans in the stands. I mean, I guess the athletes will be used to it, but this is tough. It's just going to be really tough to get into these Olympics. The entire Olympics with no fans. And look, I watch the Olympics. I like the Olympics. It's very tough to do talk shows about them, though. I mean, let's say you're watching canoeing, and something happens in one of the canoeing events. I don't know anything about canoeing. I can't say that they should have done this differently, or that happened, or this happened. It's just very tough to do Olympics talk shows. I tried it. It wasn't a fun experience. But you watch it for pride in your country. You watch it because it's a showcase of the greatest athletes in the world. And let me just say this. USA Basketball will be fine. Okay? People are going crazy that they lost to Nigeria. It was an exhibition game, and Nigeria is a good team. Okay, they have a lot of NBAers on their team. The U.S. will be fine. Should they win? Yes. In fact, the smart money is still on them to win. People are making a mountain out of a molehill with that, let me tell you. Look, a lot of people in Japan don't want the Olympics to happen. I understand where they're coming from. Their country's in really tough shape right now. Is it really the best move to have the Olympics in the midst of everything that's going on there? Look, it's tough for me to comment on it since I'm not there, but I understand where everyone's coming from. I understand why you wouldn't want it. How can you go on like everything's okay when it's clear that everything isn't okay? Meanwhile, you already pushed it back a year. This is it. If you don't do it now, these Olympics are going to be canceled. We haven't canceled the Olympics since World War II. A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money if there's no Olympics. And for most of these athletes, this is it. This is their 1 year to represent their country with the entire sports world watching. For every Simone Biles or Katie Ledecky, there's some person who you've never heard of and you'll never hear of again that's representing their country for the only time. It means a lot to these athletes. They train their whole lives for this moment. It got pushed back a year. Could be worse. Now you face the possibility of it not happening at all? No, you don't want that. I mean, the athletes should be safe. I don't want to say that we won't have a single case of the coronavirus in the Olympics, because that's not going to happen. But the Olympic Village, where all the athletes stay, can be turned into a bubble very easily. I just saw bubbles work. I saw it in the NHL, and I saw it in the NBA. Bubbles work. Here's what I don't get. Okay, the opening ceremonies are going to be on the 23rd. Why wasn't every Olympic athlete in the Olympic Village by July 9th? The Olympic Village is a built-in bubble. Test them a lot, quarantine the ones that need to be quarantined, and you're fine. Do what the NBA did. Do what the NHL did. Let them wander around the village itself. I don't mind that. But seal it off to the public and don't let them go out. Only let them go out for their events. Let them train if they need to, but it should be easy to cordon them off. I didn't think you needed to cancel the Olympics. It's the right decision to have it with no fans. I know it's tough. You built some arenas just for these games, and now those seats are going to be empty. I get that. But you don't want a COVID outbreak, which would have happened if you had fans at these games. I don't care if you're social distancing or not. I don't care if you're wearing a mask. All it takes is one person to do something stupid, and that's it. So look, I think that everyone's doing the right thing here. It's going to be tough to get into the Olympics because there are no fans. It'll also be easy because the only thing that's going on simultaneously in the sports world is baseball, and my team is really bad. So I will watch it. I'm just probably going to have a tough time getting into it. Alright, now I'm going to go through the miscellaneous sports news that broke while I was off. This isn't going to be in sport order. It's going to be in chronological order. So I'll start with Joel Eriksson Ek signing an 8-year extension with the Wild worth $42 million. That's $5.25 million a year. And I get where the Wild are coming from here. Eriksson Ek does look like he's finally putting it all together. Had a career high in goals last year with 19, career high in points with 30, career high in plus minus with plus 16, and he finished 4th in Selke Trophy voting this year. The thing is, though, you're giving this guy an 8-year deal based off one good year. I understand he's young, he's 24 years old. But 8 years at over $5 million is tough for me to get behind when you're giving that to a guy who only has one good year. Look, Eriksson Ek is a good player, and I think he's going to have a really good career. I'm not knocking him. But this is a really risky deal. Could this work out in the long term? The answer is yes. But this could also blow up in the Wild's face very easily. This is way too risky for my blood. I have a tough time supporting this. I get where the Wild are coming from. The logic makes sense. But man alive, you're playing with fire here. Moving on now to the Blue Jays trading Rowdy Tellez to the Brewers for Trevor Richards and Bowden Francis. This is an interesting move for both teams. The first basemen for the Brewers this year have been absolutely garbage. No one's going to be mistaking these guys for Cecil Cooper anytime soon. Keston Hiura has been dreadful. Daniel Vogelbach isn't great. So take a chance on a guy like Tellez, a guy who has shown that he has a ton of power. Last year, he hit 8 home runs in 35 games. The year before, he had 21 home runs. This guy has power. Now, granted, this year, it has not worked out. For the Blue Jays, he only had 4 home runs through 50 games. And he hasn't gotten off to a great start with the Brewers either. He's hitting .204 for both teams. Obviously, that's really bad, but you know that you're not going to get a great average with Tellez. Last year was an aberration. What you should hope for is power. And a ton of power at that. Tellez hasn't done that yet this year, but it is possible that he could turn it around. Would I bet the rent on it? No. But Tellez does have talent. There's no question. As for Trevor Richards, you don't need to know anything about Bowden Francis. The guy's a schmagegi. As for Richards, it's kind of interesting to see him get traded again. He started the year with the Rays. He was traded to the Brewers along with Willy Adames for J.P. Feyereisen and Drew Rasmussen. Pitches 15 games for the Brewers, goes 3-0 with a 3.2 ERA. Now he's a Blue Jay. Look, the Blue Jays bullpen this year has been dreadful. Outside of guys like Jordan Romano and Adam Simber, if I'm being generous, Taylor Saucedo, that Blue Jays bullpen is completely useless. They need all the help they can get if they're going to go on a big run to try to make the playoffs. Richards is a talented pitcher. I do like him. Didn't work out as a starter. Seems like he's going to work out as a reliever. I'll give the Blue Jays a 60-40 edge here because I think Richards is better than Tellez. I'll say this, as a Yankees fan, I'm not looking forward to going up against Richards. Moving on now to N'Keal Harry requesting a trade from the Patriots. And I understand why Harry would want out. He's behind guys like Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, and Jacoby Myers on the depth chart. It doesn't seem like he's going to get a big opportunity to show what he can do in the NFL. The thing is, though, he hasn't earned that right. N'Keal Harry isn't a good player. Last year, he had 33 catches for 309 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's not good. This guy was a first-round pick. And in his career, he only has 45 catches for 414 yards and 4 touchdowns. You've got to do better than that. I mean, look, if you're a team that needs a wide receiver, maybe you take a chance on Harry, but I just don't think he's that good. I wasn't crazy about him when he was picked in the first round. I did have a late second round grade on him. That was one of those picks where it was like, okay, it's Belichick. It'll work out. But if anyone else had done it, it would have been killed. Yeah, we can kill it. That was a really bad pick, especially when you factor in the fact that guys like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and Deontay Johnson were all still on the board. So look, is it possible that a team trades for Harry? The answer is yes. But you'd be hard-pressed to find a team to give up anything more than like a conditional sixth. It's possible that the Patriots may even cut Harry. Belichick doesn't like it when players request trades or want out. So Harry may just be able to pick his next team. Some team will take a chance on him in the free agent market. Worst comes to worst, you put him on the practice squad and you see what you have in him. You're not going to get Stanley Morgan. I'll say that. I just don't see Harry turning into anything in the NFL. I don't care where he goes. If he couldn't make it work with the Patriots, what makes you think he's going to figure it out somewhere else? Alright, this one is interesting. According to Jonathan Givony of ESPN, some teams, including the Cavaliers, Pelicans, Rockets, and Thunder, have called the Pistons to inquire on what it would take to move up to first overall. Now, this isn't saying that the Pistons are gonna move down. This strikes me as teams just doing their due diligence, which is what they're supposed to do. Maybe a team is open to doing something that you think is crazy. You never know until you ask. And it seems like the Pistons will take Cade Cunningham with the first overall pick, but it is worth discussing. Should the Pistons move down? The answer is no. It would be insane for the Pistons to trade down. Cade Cunningham is exactly what the Pistons need. That is a fan base that needs something to get excited about. You just saw Derrick Rose get traded, have a great year with the Knicks. You saw Blake Griffin get bought out, turned his career around with the Nets. I really hope they bring him back. Outside of Jeremy Grant, do you have any future building blocks? You have some good players, Josh Jackson, Sadiq Bey, Hamidou Diallo, etc., etc. But be honest, those guys aren't going to be great players down the line. And Jeremy Grant isn't great either. Jeremy Grant is the best player on a bad team. That's why his numbers are so good. He's a very good player. There's obviously a role for him in the league. But he's not a superstar. Cade Cunningham can be a superstar. He's going to be a great player in this league. He is the best player in this draft. I don't think there's much debate about that. There are other good players in this draft. I'm not saying there aren't, but there is a gap between Cunningham and guys like Evan Mobley or Jalen Suggs or Jalen Green. I'll say this. The only trade that would make any sense from those four teams that I mentioned, the Cavs, Pelicans, Rockets, and Thunder, is a Colin Sexton trade. The Pelicans, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Do you need Brandon Ingram if you have Jeremy Grant? They're very similar players. You gotta realize, Lonzo's a free agent. You can't trade him. Eric Bledsoe wouldn't interest me. Steven Adams wouldn't interest me if I was the Pistons. The only things that the Rockets and Thunder can offer is future assets. You don't need future assets. If you can get Cade Cunningham, future assets do nothing. Kemba Walker wouldn't interest me if I was the Pistons. The Thunder would do it in a heartbeat, but I don't think it makes sense for the Pistons. A Colin Sexton trade, though, that's interesting. Like Colin Sexton for the first overall pick. Who says no? That strikes me as an even trade. The Cavs would do it because Cade Cunningham fits with Darius Garland a lot better than Sexton does. Would the Pistons do it? If they're not in love with Cunningham, maybe they would. I mean, I'll say this. The Cavaliers have the third overall pick. How would you feel about moving down 2 spots? Would the third overall pick need to be in that deal? I don't know. I'll throw another scenario at you. The Pistons don't have any picks in the 2022 draft. Could the Cavaliers get away with giving up their first next year? Could they get away with trading a couple seconds next year? I don't know. The Cavs and Pistons should have a lot of conversations. There's something there. The framework for a trade is there. Colin Sexton for the first overall pick. Theoretically, it could be straight up. Could you throw other picks in there? Yes. It's going to be very interesting to see how that unfolds. Moving on now to a report from Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic that says that teams are calling the Florida Panthers about Chris Driedger. This is interesting. I've spoken about the Panthers' goaltending situation before. Sergei Bobrovsky has not worked out for them. He is not a money goalie. Chris Driedger has been better than him the past couple years. And Spencer Knight is ready to contribute in the NHL. Now, you can't move on from Bobrovsky. No one's going to take that contract. You're stuck with him. You don't want to move on from Spencer Knight because he's probably the best goalie prospect in the NHL. The only guy to trade is Driedger, and it makes sense for the Panthers to trade Driedger. If you have Spencer Knight, you can move on from Driedger. The thing is, though, what team is going to look at Chris Driedger as a starting goalie? Realize, any team that trades for Driedger now would need to have him as the goalie that they're protecting in the expansion draft. Also, Driedger has a very limited track record. I mean, I like Driedger. I think he has talent, but to name him your starting goalie as the guy who's going to play 50 to 60 games for you, that's tough. I've seen goalies have magical stretches. They're looked at as future starters, then they flame out. Case in point, Scott Darling and Andrew Hammond. Is it a guarantee that Driedger's going to suffer the same fate as those guys? No. I like Driedger. I think Driedger's a good player. I don't think you're going to see Driedger traded until after the first wave of free agency. There will be a team that misses out on their top goalie target, and they'll look at Driedger as a fallback and say, he can either be a really good backup for us or a starter, and we'll just roll with it. We'll see what we have in him. I don't see Driedger being traded before the expansion draft. Moving on now to the Red Sox signing Matt Barnes to a 2-year extension worth $18.75 million. It could max out at $26.5 million, but the guarantee is $18.75 million. And this is a good move for the Red Sox. I like Matt Barnes. As much as it kills me to say it, he's a good pitcher. He's not great. There are better relievers than him, but he's a good closer. He made the All-Star team this year for the first time in his career. He's 4-2 with a 2.61 ERA. He has 19 saves. He's a very good pitcher. You're getting him for under $10 million a year on the guarantee. There's a team option for 2024. So again, if everything maxes out, it's still under $10 million. In fact, it's under $9 million. This is a really good move for the Red Sox. I like Barnes. He's on my fantasy team. It's not too early to be looking forward to October. We're in the All-Star break right now. The Red Sox will be a force to be reckoned with in the postseason. I'll say this, I think we're going to have a really good playoffs. Like in both leagues, I think it's going to be really, really good. Very easy to get into. Even if your team isn't in it. Like my team won't be. No way the Yankees are making the playoffs. I'll get into that tonight. Moving on now to the Magic hiring Jamal Mosley as their head coach. And I don't mind this move. Mosley is well respected all throughout the NBA. In fact, there were rumors that he could take over for Rick Carlisle if the Mavericks wanted to stay in-house. Well, they did stay in-house, they just did it in a roundabout way by hiring Jason Kidd. He didn't want to keep Mosley, that's okay. So instead of Mosley having to settle for another assistant coaching job somewhere, he's now the head coach in the Magic. He's got his work cut out for him, though. I mean, that's going to be a long rebuild. Realize, they traded Vujovic, they traded Fournier, they traded Aaron Gordon. They're looking to guys like Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, Wendell Carter, RJ Hampton, Mo Bamba, and John Isaac to really step up. I mean, I think all those guys are good. I really like those guys, but can they constitute the core of a team that's gonna make the playoffs? I don't know. It's possible. They need a really good coach to help him out. They're going to need a coach to point them in the right direction. Can that be Mosley? The answer is yes. The thing is, though, that job should have gone to Kenny Atkinson. What do the Orlando Magic need? A coach to get the most out of their young guns. Who showed in his over 3.5 years with the Nets that he can do that? Kenny Atkinson. Who deserves a second chance to be an NBA head coach? Kenny Atkinson. From what I saw, the Magic never looked at Atkinson as a serious candidate, and I just don't get why. It's not like he turned down the job. The Magic just weren't interested in him. Look, I think this hire can work out. Mosley is well respected all throughout the league. Congrats to him for getting a chance to lead his own team, but this job should have gone to Kenny Atkinson. There's just no way around it. I'll close this show out by eulogizing the late, great Terry Donahue, who died on Independence Day at the age of 77. Terry Donahue is, without question, the best coach in the history of UCLA football. We think of UCLA as a basketball school. In the 1980s, they were a football school. I can even expand it past UCLA. Terry Donahue, in the 1980s, was one of the best coaches in the nation. In Pac-12, or as it was then known, Pac-10 conference play, Donahue had 98 wins. That is the most in conference history. This guy won a bowl game, including 3 Rose Bowls in 4 years, in 7 straight seasons, from 1982 to 1988. You think about the great UCLA players of the 80s. Guys like Troy Aikman, Don Rogers, Tim Reitman. Granted, Rogers and Reitman didn't work out in the NFL, but they were really good college players. And obviously, Troy Aikman became a Pro Football Hall of Famer. They wouldn't have reached the levels that they reached if not for Donahue. In the 1990s, UCLA took a little bit of a step back. They weren't winning as many bowl games. They did win the Sun Bowl in 1991. It was a defensive slugfest. UCLA beat Illinois 6-3. But that was the high watermark of Donahue's 1990s UCLA tenure. That and seeing Jonathan Ogden turn into one of the best offensive linemen in all of football. In 1998, and I didn't know this, thank you Wikipedia, Donahue had the chance to be reunited with Troy Aikman. After the Cowboys moved on from Barry Switzer, Jerry Jones offered the Cowboys head coaching job to Donahue. Negotiations broke down. The Cowboys went with Chan Gailey. There is no question that Terry Donahue would have done a better job than Chan Gailey. He would have lasted more than 2 seasons. In fact, I'll go as far as to say that he would have won a playoff game. He would make it to the NFL, though. When Bill Walsh's career was winding down, Walsh handpicked Donahue to replace him as GM. Donahue was director of player personnel for the Niners for 2 seasons. Then in 2001, he took over as Niners GM. In Donahue's first 2 years as Niners GM, they made the playoffs. And they won a game, that thrilling 39-38 victory against the Giants, where the Niners scored 25 unanswered points. The thing is, though, after that thrilling victory, the Niners got blown out by the Buccaneers 31-6. It was a horror show. There's no question about that. In response to that loss, Donahue made a big mistake. He fired Steve Mariucci and replaced him with Dennis Erickson. Mariucci was a better coach than Eriksson. There's no question about that. In Eriksson's first year as Niners head coach, they went 7-9. But then his last year, they went 2-14. After that year, both Donahue and Eriksson were fired. But don't let that cloud your opinion of Donahue. This guy was an excellent coach, would have been a good coach in the NFL, wasn't a terrible general manager. In all fairness to him, he did make the playoffs in half his seasons. He had a great career. Was inducted into the Rose Bowl Hall of Fame in 1997, the College Football Hall of Fame in 2000, the UCLA Athletics Hall of Fame the year after, and the Sun Bowl Hall of Fame in 2005. You can't say enough nice things about Terry Donahue. The guy's a legend. May he rest in peace. New York Yankees show comes your way tonight. Also, I have some interview news to tell you about. On Thursday, you're going to get an interview that I'm going to do with Tommy Phillips, the author of a book on all of Penn State's bowl games. So you remember the Neil Golden interview about LSU's bowl games? It's going to be similar to that, except it's going to be about Penn State. Regular episodes of The Jacob Valk Show obviously come your way every weekday afternoon. It's good to be back. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that the more French women I meet, the more French I learn.